Hi everyone, my name's Louise, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my latest blog post, which is how scoliosis has affected my mental health. It's a massive topic, this, and it was quite a difficult blog post to write, but I just thought I'd do a video to kind of go through it as well. So this weekend coming up on the 10th of October is World Mental Health Day, which is kind of what prompted me to do the post. And got me thinking a bit about how scoliosis has impacted my own mental health over the years. What many people don't realise is that scoliosis is a lot more than just a back condition. So depending on the severity, the location of the curves, scoliosis can cause physical deformities, neurological issues, breathing issues, digestive problems, and all sorts of other issues as well. It's also a chronic condition as well, which means it can't be cured, and it can be progressive as well in severe cases, which my own scoliosis was classed as severe. This is not to say that people with scoliosis can't live an active and normal life, but the symptoms associated with the condition can in some cases trigger mental health issues, such as in my own case, anxiety, stress, and depression. These are symptoms that are not often talked about in association with scoliosis, but I do think that scoliosis can massively impact mental health, and I do think the risk factors should be spoken about more. So how has scoliosis affected my mental health? Well, in my case, it caused me huge low self-esteem issues and body image issues, which were kind of, I suppose, more apparent when I was a teenager. But my scoliosis was classed as severe, which means I did have before surgery quite a large rib bulge on my back, which was caused from my rib cage curving and twisting. It wasn't just uncomfortable, but as a young girl made me very paranoid about how I looked. I really hated myself. I spent a lot of my teenage years upset about it and covering myself up in baggy clothes. And it does make me sad, to think back to how I felt, how low I was back then and how low I felt about myself. So over the years, these feelings, got worse and affected my behaviour in lots of ways. I'd avoid activities where I knew my back would be on show. So things like swimming, things like that, I would literally just avoid. In photographs, I would always angle myself a certain way to kind of hide my rib deformity that I had on my back. I was constantly paranoid that people were staring at me and laughing at me, thinking that I looked weird. Even if someone just glanced at me, I was really paranoid. They were looking at me, looking at my back. Another thing as well, I became quite obsessed with looking at other people's backs, and the people without scoliosis, I would look at their backs and feel jealous and wish that my back looked like theirs. I used to call myself horrible names. Now, today, I feel better about myself and I've learned to embrace, who I am. It's taken quite a long time, but, finally now, I'm proud of my scoliosis and the person it's helped me to become. I do still feel self-conscious sometimes, but now I will wear basically what I like, because I care less about what people think, and in the majority of cases most people don't really notice, and they're mostly thinking about themselves anyway, and not me, and I know that now. But when I was a teenager I was very paranoid about it. But I do think the negative self-talk that I did as a teenager has had a lasting impact on me today. The feelings of low self-worth and low self-confidence follow me around today. I constantly think that I'm not good enough, and I do feel paranoid and uncomfortable now with people seeing and touching my back, and there are things that I do still avoid because of that, but I do feel like I'm better than I was, but it has had a lasting effect. So I think that is quite important, and I think a lot of people with scoliosis suffer from low self-esteem and body image issues, especially teenage girls, because that's an age where it's a difficult age anyway in terms of how you look. You're going through puberty, and having scoliosis and a physical deformity that makes you different on top of that, it can be very, very hard and difficult to deal with. And I think that it does have a lasting impact on people's mental health. Another way I think that scoliosis has affected my mental health is anxiety and just general stress about the condition. I think over the years it's caused me a lot of stress and anxiety. I think it was more the case just after my diagnosis and in my early 20s, when I was faced with the decision over whether to have scoliosis surgery or not. When I was initially diagnosed, it was very overwhelming, a massive shock. I was told my scoliosis was severe at the time and that I would benefit from spinal surgery. If I didn't have the surgery, there was a risk it could progress over time, and if I did, there was the risks associated with surgery in general. And as a 14-year-old, that's quite a big thing to be, to have on your shoulders. Do you have the surgery? Do you not have the surgery? What to do for the best, really. At the time, I convinced myself that if I did have the surgery, that I could be paralysed, even though the risks of this are very small. As a 14-year-old who's just been told they need spinal surgery, that's the first thing that I thought of. And I just thought, my life was over at that point. I remember on the day that I was diagnosed, when I got home, I just went straight up to my room and spent the rest of the day just crying because I was so upset about it all. But then, due to various reasons, I didn't have the surgery until I was in my 20s, but I did have regular checkups. But during this period of time, I spent a lot of my time upset and worrying that my scoliosis was getting worse, as well as feeling anxious about the future. I was worried that I might not be able to do normal everyday things in the future. I might end up in a lot of pain, not being able to walk. Those are the sort of things that I was worried about at the time. So there's all the anxiety around that and the future. And then having the surgery itself obviously was very stressful. I think it was probably one of the most stressful periods of my life, to be honest. I was worried, whether I was doing the right thing. I was worried about the risks. I was terrified, really. And at the time, it's all I thought about. It consumed me, it consumed my life. And then my anxiety over it manifested into physical symptoms, such as things like ectopic heartbeats, where I had a lot of heart palpitations and missed heartbeats, like skipped beats. Lots of obsessive behaviours over my back, and insomnia as well. And then post-surgery, my anxiety just continued. I thought, surgery would basically get rid of all of the anxiety, but for months and even years following my surgery, I was still struggling with anxiety over my back. I found myself taking daily photographs of my back and studying them. I was very anxious that my spine was moving despite the surgery. But whilst it was fusing, I was panicking that it could still move, so I was taking pictures pretty much every day, and hundreds of pictures, not just like one or two. I would compare my back and x-rays to those of others who'd had the surgery. Basically, I was convinced at the time that my correction wasn't as good as other people's, and it became a bit of an unhealthy obsession of mine at the time. And obviously, due to the nature of the surgery itself, I was also in a lot of pain and discomfort during the recovery, which was very, very tough mentally. And at the time I was worrying that I would never feel normal again. So yeah, it was a tough thing to go through, and I'd say now my anxiety around my scoliosis is much better. So my surgery was 10 years ago now, and I know now that I can do activities that I thought I could never do, such as running and things like that I do today. I know that my spine is fused and can't move, so I kind of stopped taking the photographs and just accepted that it won't move. It doesn't stop me worrying about the future, potential pain and problems that I might get in the future. I do have back pain. It's not crippling back pain, I can still do things, but I do have back pain, and some days are worse than others, depends what I've been doing. I do get like neurological symptoms as well, so I get numbness in places down my legs, on my back, and I get pins and needles and things like that, which I'm worrying about constantly, whether they're going to get worse, like why it's happening, things like that. So yeah, I don't let my scoliosis stop me from doing anything now, and I think my anxiety is better, but it's always there in the back of my mind. I'm always worrying about it and thinking about it. So I'd say anxiety for me is, around my scoliosis has had an impact on my mental health, definitely. And then I think another impact it had when I was first diagnosed was depression. So at that time of diagnosis, my parents were unsure about the surgery because it was such a major surgery. So because of this, at the time, when I was only 14, I couldn't make the decision without my parents. So we went into what they call a watch and wait phase, where my scoliosis was basically monitored in yearly checkups. So this phase was very hard for me, and I basically felt like I was in limbo. Everything I did, my scoliosis sort of hung over me. I felt like I couldn't progress with my life, or be happy. I was constantly worrying that it was progressing or that it might progress, and I felt quite down about living with scoliosis, for the rest of my life. So during this period, I tried to live a normal life. I went to university, got a boyfriend, all the usual things at that age, but I wasn't happy. Instead of talking about my condition, I isolated myself from everyone. I spent a lot of long nights in my room searching the internet, for answers, reading other people's surgical stories, and just generally researching the surgery and the potential of what was involved. I missed out on a lot of things, I'd say, that normal young people do, because I was so down and obsessed about my back that I didn't want to do anything. And then on top of this, I started to get quite bad muscle spasms and back pain, and at the time I was only 21. And I remember clearly thinking that I'd rather die than live how I was. And that sounds quite morbid and quite dramatic, but at the time, that's how I felt. And looking back at this is hard, and I think I probably needed help at this stage, but I didn't realise it myself. I didn't realise that, I was suffering from, this sort of, I guess, a kind of depression. I was just so fixated on my scoliosis and my back. But at the time, I hated myself, pain was getting worse, and I just didn't want to be here anymore. And that's when I realised, that things needed to change. So during this time, I decided to find a surgeon and, go for the surgery, basically. I knew it was a risk, but I felt that, in my own mind, if the surgery went wrong or there was any complications, at least I tried to help myself, because I was just not happy at the time. So luckily for me, the surgery went well. It helped my pain, corrected the majority of my deformity. But now you can't really tell that I have scoliosis unless you look very closely and know what you're looking for. But even though the surgery went well and was a success, my depression did continue post-surgery for a while. think it was mainly due to the immense pain that I was in, and I couldn't really do a lot for, I'd say, 6 to 12 months or so. I also had to come to terms with the fact that even though I'd had a fantastic result and the surgery went well, I wasn't, my spine wasn't 100% straight, because it was that severe that it was impossible to get it 100% straight after. And I knew that I wouldn't be 100% straight, but it was just difficult for me to deal with, because I knew that I would always have this, deformity, for the rest of my life. So that was hard to accept. I'd say today, my scoliosis still does impact my behaviour, which shows that surgery can't always fix the psychological impacts, psychological symptoms associated. But overall I'm happy with the results, and I'm glad that I did go through the surgery. The whole experience was very tough, physically and mentally, but I feel that it put me in a better place overall, and in many ways saved my life. I still get back pain, nerve issues, like I said earlier, but I guess that's just the nature of the condition. One thing though it's important to realise is that everybody's scoliosis is different. So some people may have chronic pain, and others might barely be affected, and it doesn't really affect them at all. So it just depends on the individual case, really. In my case, I do worry sometimes about the future. If the pain is bad on a particular day, then it does make me feel low, because I know that I have to live with it. It's not going to go away. I suppose the one small comfort is that I know that the curves can't get any worse now because I've had the surgery. The surgery isn't a quick fix or a cure, but it did improve my quality of life, definitely. Another way that it affected my mental health is just general isolation. So when I was first diagnosed, I did feel quite alone. I'd never heard of the condition, and I didn't know anyone with it. I felt like I had no one to talk to, or no one who could really understand what I was going through. I didn't tell anyone about my scoliosis for a long time because I felt ashamed. I know now that I probably should have spoken to people and sought help at the time, but at the time, that's how I just dealt with the situation. I just locked myself away and isolated myself from everyone. It took me quite a while to start opening up to people and telling people about it. I started with close friends, and then when I was in my early 20s, I joined a scoliosis support forum and spoke with people in similar situations. And then some of those people I'm still friends with and I still speak to today. There's a lot to be said, I think, for reaching out to people in similar situations. I think that's really important if you have scoliosis, because isolating yourself and not connecting with others in similar situations can definitely impact your mental well-being, because you can feel quite alone and isolated. And that's kind of what happened to me, really. So I think, when I did that, it helped me to feel normal again, and I felt so much better. I felt like I wasn't alone, and that my back wasn't, it's not uncommon the way it looked, people with the condition. And, it's partly why I created this blog years later and this YouTube channel, because I wanted other people with scoliosis to know that they're not alone. I think in many ways now it's easier because of all the technology and the social media being so accessible. When I was first diagnosed at 14, it was quite difficult to connect with others and find people with the condition. But one downside to it is that a lot of the information out there about scoliosis is quite a lot of information that's kind of out of date or inaccurate, which again can fuel anxiety further in those with a condition. When I was first diagnosed, I found all sorts of information on, online that really scared me. and made me feel a lot worse. But a lot of it was, you know, information based on really old surgical techniques that it's just not the case now. So it's important to understand that you can't trust everything that you read online about scoliosis, and it's important to use reliable sources out there, so your own doctor, your own surgeon, and sites like Scoliosis Association, you know, they're really good for providing accurate information as well that you can trust. So there are a few ways that having scoliosis have impacted my mental health. Whilst these are my own experiences with scoliosis and mental health, it doesn't mean that everyone with scoliosis will struggle in these ways. But I just wanted to write my blog post and do this video to highlight that there is often a lot more scoliosis than back pain. The condition, in my opinion, can certainly impact mental health, and this is often the case in many conditions that cause chronic pain. So if you have scoliosis yourself, I'd be interested to hear how it's affected your mental health, if it has. So feel free to leave me a comment below, or if you head over to my website, which is www.lifewithscoliosis.com, and my blog post, Scoliosis and Mental Health, it's on there at the moment. And if you can leave a comment there and just let me know how scoliosis has impacted your mental health, I'd be really interested to hear your own stories, because I think it's something that I think is overlooked quite a lot in people with scoliosis, but I think it's really important. So, but yeah, that's kind of it for now. If you would like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, then I plan to add regular videos about my blog posts and my experiences with scoliosis. Or you can follow me on Instagram, which I post a lot about my running and my adventures and things that I get up to, and that is at MissLuby_runs. So thank you, and thanks for watching, and bye for now.